Have you ever wondered if a single small act of kindness, something you do without a second thought, could change the entire trajectory of your life? What if doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, could open a door you never even knew existed? We live in a world that often feels transactional, where every gesture seems to expect something in return. But what if simple, unadulterated integrity is the rarest and most valuable currency of all? If you enjoy heartfelt stories that touch the soul and reaffirm your faith in humanity, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you never miss a moment of magic from our channel. Today, we bring you a story that asks these very questions, a tale of an ordinary man facing extraordinary circumstances, whose life is irrevocably altered by an act of simple decency. This is not just a story about good fortune. It's a story about unrecognized virtue finding its reward in the most unexpected of ways. It's about how the quiet strength of character can resonate far beyond our immediate lives, creating ripples we may never fully comprehend. So, if you believe that healing can come when we least expect it, that second chances are real, and that the universe has a funny way of connecting souls through threads of kindness, then stay with us. This one's for you. Now, let me tell you a story called The Lost Collar and the Golden Gate Opportunity. Eli Carson was a man carved from the resilient, often overlooked bedrock of San Francisco. He wasn't one of the city's glittering tech titans or its bohemian artists celebrated in song and story. He was simply Eli, a struggling single dad navigating the currents of life with a quiet determination that was both his shield and his engine. His days were a patchwork of odd jobs. A morning shift, delivering groceries where he knew the orders of elderly customers by heart. An afternoon spent doing handyman work in homes far grander than his own cramped apartment in the outer sunset, and sometimes, if he was lucky, a late-night gig washing dishes in a restaurant kitchen where the clatter of plates was a temporary reprieve from the clatter of his own worries. He carried his 40-something years with a weariness that settled in the lines around his kind eyes, eyes that had seen too much loss but still held a glimmer of gentle warmth. His wife, Maria, had been taken by a swift and merciless illness 3 years prior, leaving a void in his life that ached with the persistence of a phantom limb, a loss that had also unceremoniously dumped him into a financial chasm from which he was still trying to claw his way out. His primary focus, his guiding star in the often overcast sky of his existence, was his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. For her, he would move mountains, or at least navigate the labyrinthine streets of San Francisco in his aging, sputtering pickup truck, chasing down any work that would keep their small boat afloat. He possessed an inherent goodness, a deep-seated decency that life's harder knocks hadn't managed to erode, though it often felt like a trait undervalued in a world that prized assertiveness and self-promotion above all else. His worn-out boots, the kind with years of grease and gravel etched into their soles, had trod many miles in search of stability, a permanent, reliable job that seemed as elusive as the city's famous fog on a clear summer day. One crisp October afternoon, the kind where the San Francisco air bit with a refreshing sharpness and the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, Eli was walking through Golden Gate Park after a particularly disheartening morning. A potential long-term handyman gig he'd been counting on had fallen through at the last minute, the homeowner opting for a larger, more established company. The sting of rejection was familiar, yet it never quite lost its edge. He often sought solace in the park, the green expanse a balm to his frayed nerves. Lily was at school, and he had a couple of hours before he needed to pick her up. Hours he usually spent strategizing his next move, poring over job listings on his phone, or simply trying to quiet the anxieties that gnawed at him. He was near the Japanese tea garden, the scent of damp earth and pine needles in the air, when he heard it, a frantic, high-pitched yelping. It wasn't the playful bark of a dog enjoying a romp, but a sound laced with distress. His steps, usually measured and thoughtful, quickened. Rounding a thicket of rhododendrons, he saw a small, scruffy terrier mix, a bundle of tawny fur with panicked eyes, darting back and forth, its leash trailing behind it, snagged on a low-hanging branch. The dog was clearly terrified, pulling against the snagged leash with such force that it was choking itself, its tiny body trembling. There was no owner in sight. Eli approached slowly, his voice soft, murmuring calming sounds. "Hey there, little fella. Easy now. Easy. I'm not gonna hurt you." He'd always had a way with animals, a gentle patience that seemed to soothe them. The dog, initially wary, seemed to register the kindness in his tone, its frantic movements ceasing slightly, though its eyes remained wide with fear. Carefully, Eli reached out and untangled the leash from the branch. The dog, freed, didn't bolt as he expected, but instead looked up at him, its breathing still ragged. He knelt, offering the back of his hand for the dog to sniff. It hesitated, then gave a tentative lick. The collar was expensive-looking, tooled leather, but the tags were oddly missing, perhaps torn off in its panic or during its escape. Just a small, silver bone-shaped charm with the initial B engraved on it. No name, no phone number. "Well, B," Eli murmured, gently stroking the dog's head. "Looks like you're lost. Let's see if we can find your people, huh?" He knew the protocol. Check for microchips, post online, put up flyers. But his first instinct was to look around, to see if an anxious owner was nearby. He spent the next hour walking the dog, whom he provisionally named Buster based on the B charm, around the vicinity, asking joggers, picnicking families, and park rangers if they recognized the terrier. No one did. The dog, now calmer, trotted happily beside him, occasionally looking up with an expression of bewildered trust. Eli felt a pang of responsibility. He couldn't just leave it. As the afternoon wore on, and the time to pick up Lily approached, he realized he'd have to take Buster home for the night. At least. His small apartment barely had room for him and Lily, let alone a dog. But the thought of taking it to a shelter, with their overflowing kennels and uncertain outcomes, didn't sit right with him. This was someone's beloved pet. He could tell by the quality of the collar and the dog's generally well-groomed appearance, despite its current dishevelment. The next morning, after a night of Buster sleeping soundly on an old blanket at the foot of Lily's bed, Lily, of course, was instantly smitten and had already planned Buster's entire future as her best friend. Eli started his search in earnest. He took Buster to a local vet, who confirmed the dog had a microchip. A wave of relief washed over Eli. The vet scanned the chip, and a name and address appeared on the screen. Julian Vance, with an address in Pacific Heights. Eli's eyebrows rose. Pacific Heights was a world away from the outer sunset, a realm of panoramic views, sprawling mansions, and old money mixed with new tech fortunes. He didn't recognize the name Julian Vance, but the address spoke volumes. He called the number associated with the chip, his heart thumping a little faster than usual. A harried-sounding assistant answered. When Eli explained he had found Mr. Vance's dog, the assistant's voice changed, relief flooding through the line. An appointment was made for Eli to bring Buster to Mr. Vance's office downtown later that afternoon. The assistant had offered to send a car, but Eli, ever practical and not wanting to be a bother, said he could manage. He had a delivery job in that area anyway. Later that day, with Buster secured in a borrowed carrier in the passenger seat of his truck, Eli navigated the bustling streets towards the financial district. He found the address, a sleek, modern skyscraper of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the sky. The lobby was a cathedral of commerce, all marble floors, soaring ceilings, and the quiet hum of significant money being made. It was a stark contrast to the scuffed linoleum floors and flickering fluorescent lights of the places he usually frequented. He felt a familiar sense of being out of place. his worn jeans and flannel shirt suddenly conspicuous amidst the tailored suits and designer dresses. He clutched the dog carrier a little tighter, a small warm anchor in this imposing, unfamiliar sea. He announced himself to the receptionist, a woman with an impeccably sculpted bob and an expression of polite, professional detachment. Eli Carson, to see Mr. Vance. I have his dog. The receptionist's perfectly plucked eyebrow rose a fraction. Then she spoke into her headset, her voice a low murmur. A moment later, she directed him to a private elevator. Penthouse suite, Mr. Carson. The elevator ascended with a silent, disconcerting swiftness, opening directly into a reception area that was larger than Eli's entire apartment. A young man with an eager-to-please smile, presumably the assistant Eli had spoken to, rushed forward. Mr. Carson, thank you so much for coming. MrCarson.com. Vance has been beside himself. He led Eli through a series of minimalist, art-filled corridors into a vast corner office. The view was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of the San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz, and the Golden Gate Bridge, all bathed in the golden light of the late afternoon. Seated behind an enormous mahogany desk, a desk that looked like it had been hewn from a single ancient tree, was a man who exuded an aura of quiet intensity. This was Julian Vance. He was perhaps in his late 50s, with silvering hair meticulously styled, and eyes that were a startlingly sharp blue, currently clouded with worry. He wore a bespoke suit that probably cost more than Eli earned in 6 months, but there was a rumpled, anxious quality to him today that transcended his obvious wealth. As Eli set down the carrier and opened its door, Buster scrambled out, gave a joyful yelp, and launched himself into Julian Vance's arms. The transformation in the tech mogul was instantaneous. The worry lines on his face softened, the tension in his shoulders eased, and a genuine, unguarded smile spread across his lips as he hugged the little terrier, murmuring endearments. Buster! Oh, you little rascal, where have you been? I've been worried sick. He looked up at Eli, his sharp blue eyes, now cleared of anxiety, focusing on him with an intensity that was almost unnerving. Thank you, he said, his voice husky with emotion. Thank you so much, Mr. Carson. Buster means the world to me. Eli, feeling a little awkward in the opulence of the office and the raw display of emotion, simply nodded. Glad I could help, sir. He's a great dog. He hadn't expected anything for his efforts. The relief on the man's face and seeing Buster happily reunited was reward enough. The vet scanned his microchip this morning. That's how I found you. Julian Vance stood, still cradling Buster, who was now licking his chin ecstatically. My assistant said you found him in Golden Gate Park yesterday. Yes, sir. Near the tea garden. His leash was tangled. No tags. Just that little bee charm. Eli recounted the simple story. Hearing the yelps, untangling the leash, the unsuccessful search for an owner, taking Buster home, Lily's immediate adoration, and the trip to the vet. He omitted the part about his own anxieties. The fallen-through job, the constant financial pressures. Those were his burdens, not relevant here. He just told the facts of finding and returning the dog. Julian listened intently, his gaze never leaving Eli's face. There was a perceptiveness in those blue eyes that made Eli feel as though the man was seeing more than just the surface details. When Eli finished, Julian was silent for a moment, stroking Buster's head thoughtfully. My housekeeper was supposed to be walking him. Well, let's just say she's no longer in my employ. Buster must have slipped his collar tags when he bolted. He's a rescue, you know, easily spooked by loud noises. That new construction nearby must have set him off. He paused, then said, I'd like to compensate you for your time and trouble, Mr. Carson, and for looking after him so well. He gestured towards his desk. Please, name your price. Eli felt a flush creep up his neck. Oh, no, sir. That's really not necessary. I didn't do it for a reward. I'm just glad he's safe." Anyone would have done the same. It was a reflexive statement, born of his innate humility, but he meant it sincerely. He had his own struggles, yes, but profiting from a simple act of decency felt wrong. He'd been raised to believe that some things were done just because they were the right thing to do. Julian Vance's expression shifted then, the gratitude softening into something else entirely, a keen analytical assessment mixed with a surprising degree of respect. He studied Eli for a long moment, a silence that stretched until Eli began to feel a little uncomfortable, wondering if he'd inadvertently offended the man by refusing the offer of money. He started to mumble an apology, thinking perhaps he should just take his leave. "Well, sir, if that's all, I should probably get going. My daughter—" "Mr. Carson," Julian interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "Please, sit down for a moment. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, if you have the time." He gestured to one of the plush leather armchairs facing his desk. Eli, surprised, hesitated. He hadn't expected this. He had expected a quick thank you, maybe a handshake, and then he'd be back out on the street, back to his own world. This invitation felt different, but the man's gaze was compelling. Confused but intrigued, Eli slowly sat down. Buster, content now, had curled up on a velvet cushion near Julian's feet. Julian Vance settled back into his own chair, his fingers steepled. "You said anyone would have done the same," he began, his blue eyes fixed on Eli. "But I can assure you, Mr. Carson, that in my experience not everyone does. Not everyone takes the time. Not everyone acts with such uncomplicated integrity, especially when there's no obvious personal gain." He paused, a thoughtful frown etching itself between his brows. "I've been in this city, in this business, for a very long time. I've seen all kinds of people. Those who seek advantage, those who cut corners, those who wouldn't lift a finger unless there was something in it for them. What you did, finding Buster, taking him in, getting him scanned, returning him expecting nothing, that's rare." Eli shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to such scrutiny, nor such praise. "I just did what felt right, Mr. Vance." "Exactly," Julian said, a faint smile touching his lips. "What felt right? That's a compass not many people seem to possess, or if they do, they often ignore it." He leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Carson, I'm embarking on a new venture, something quite different from my usual tech enterprises. It's a philanthropic foundation focused on community-level initiatives, practical solutions for everyday people. And I've been searching for a particular kind of individual to help me get one of its core projects off the ground. Someone grounded, someone reliable, someone with unimpeachable honesty, someone who understands how things work at a practical level, not just on a spreadsheet." Eli listened, a sense of bewildered unreality washing over him. He couldn't see where this was going, what this powerful, wealthy man could possibly want with someone like him, a handyman struggling to make ends meet. Eli, trying to process the turn the conversation had taken, could only manage a quiet, "I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Vance. What does that have to do with me?" He thought of Maria, how she'd always said his quiet steadfastness was his greatest strength, even when the world seemed to reward the loud and flashy. He'd often dismissed it, thinking it was just her loving bias. But perhaps Julian Vance saw something similar. He found himself explaining almost involuntarily, "Look, sir, finding your dog, it wasn't a big deal. My wife, Maria, she passed a few years ago. She loved animals. And I teach my daughter, Lily, that kindness doesn't have a price tag. It's just how we try to be." He felt a blush rise to his cheeks, embarrassed by his own earnestness in this temple of high finance. Julian Vance's expression softened with an unexpected empathy. "I'm very sorry to hear about your wife, Mr. Carson." He paused, allowing a moment of respectful silence. "And what you teach your daughter, that's precisely the ethos I'm talking about. This new foundation, the Vance Institute for Community Renewal, it's not about abstract theories. It's about tangible impact. One of our first major projects is a mobile outreach program, taking essential services directly to underserved neighborhoods. Healthcare, job counseling, digital literacy, even simple things like helping folks navigate bureaucracy. We need someone to manage the logistical side of that, someone hands-on, who can troubleshoot, who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, and most importantly, someone I can trust implicitly with resources and with the people we aim to serve, someone with heart." He leaned back, his gaze unwavering. "For months, I've interviewed candidates with impressive resumes, MBAs, years of nonprofit management experience. They all talk a good game. But I've been looking for something more, something that isn't quantifiable on paper. Character, integrity, the kind you've demonstrated." Then came the words Eli could never have anticipated in 1,000 lifetimes. "Mr. Carson, I'm offering you a position, operations manager for our new community mobile health initiative. It's a significant role, with a commensurate salary and benefits. We need someone who understands how things work on the ground, who can see a problem and find a practical solution, who doesn't mind long hours if it means making a real difference. Someone who, frankly, gives a damn." Eli stared, speechless. His mind reeled. Operations manager. Salary and benefits? For him, it sounded like a dream, a fantastical plot from one of Lily's storybooks. He, Eli Carson, the odd-job man, being offered a managerial position by a tech mogul in a penthouse office overlooking the city. The sheer improbability of it was overwhelming. "Mr. Vance, I don't know what to say," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm a handyman. I fix leaky faucets, I paint walls, I deliver groceries. I don't have any management experience. No fancy degrees." The ghosts of past rejections, of feeling perpetually underqualified, rose up to whisper doubts in his ear. "Why me?" he finally asked, the question raw with disbelief. "Surely there are hundreds of people more qualified than I am." Julian Vance smiled, a genuine, knowing smile that reached his eyes. "Perhaps on paper, Mr. Carson. But I'm not hiring a resume. I'm hiring a person. Your qualifications in this instance are your honesty, your resourcefulness. You found my dog when my entire staff couldn't, your apparent lack of guile, and your inherent decency. You see, this initiative isn't just about efficiency. It's about building trust with communities that have often been let down. Your character is your most valuable asset. As for the rest, the specific operational details, I believe you're a quick learner, and you'll have a supportive team. I need someone at the helm of this who leads by example, with quiet competence and unwavering integrity, someone who knows the value of hard work because they've lived it." He continued, his voice earnest. "People like you, Mr. Carson, quiet, steady, selfless. You are the kind of people who can actually make programs like this work, not because of a degree, but because of who you are. I see it. I saw it the moment you refused any reward for an act that, to me, was invaluable. That told me more than any interview ever could. The salary will provide stability for you and your daughter. The work, I hope, will provide purpose. Think about it. No pressure. But the offer is real, and it's on the table." Eli felt a dizzying mix of hope and trepidation. Stability, purpose, for him and Lily. It was everything he dared to dream of, but had long since relegated to the realm of impossibility. The weight of Julian Vance's belief in him was both terrifying and exhilarating. He thought of Lily's bright, hopeful face, of the constant worry that shadowed his days. Could this be real? Could one lost dog truly open such a door? Eli walked out of the gleaming skyscraper and onto the bustling streets of the financial district in a daze. The cacophony of city sounds, the rumble of streetcars, the distant wail of a siren, the chatter of pedestrians seemed muted, as if he were moving through a dream. He walked 3 blocks without any real direction, Julian Vance's offer replaying in his mind like a stuck record. Operations manager. Salary and benefits. Character. Integrity. He clutched the simple, elegant business card Vance had pressed into his hand, the embossed lettering feeling alien and substantial beneath his fingertips. He tried to make sense of what had just happened. It was too much, too sudden. One moment he was a handyman, worried about making rent. The next, he was being offered a position that could change everything. The pendulum of his emotions swung wildly between giddy disbelief and a profound, ingrained skepticism. Men like Julian Vance didn't just pluck ordinary Joes off the street and offer them careers. There had to be a catch. Or perhaps he was simply too accustomed to life's disappointments to readily accept such an extraordinary stroke of good fortune. He found himself at the Embarcadero, staring out at the grey, choppy waters of the bay. The fog was rolling in, shrouding the distant span of the Bay Bridge in a soft, ethereal embrace. It mirrored the fog in his own mind. He thought of Maria. What would she have said? He could almost hear her voice, warm and encouraging. Eli, mi amor, sometimes good things happen to good people. Maybe it's your turn. But then his own internal critic, honed by years of struggle, would counter, "You're not qualified. You'll fail. You'll let him down, and worse, you'll let Lily down by hoping for too much." He sat on a cold stone bench, the wind whipping at his hair, and pulled out his phone. He needed to talk to the one person whose faith in him was absolute. "Hi, Daddy." Lily's cheerful voice answered on the second ring. She was at her after-school program. "Hey, Sweet Pea, how's your day going?" "Good. We made volcanoes with baking soda. It was awesome. How was yours? Did you find a job?" Her innocent question, a regular feature of their calls, usually landed with a slight pang of guilt for Eli. Today, it felt different. He took a deep breath. "Well, something really unexpected happened. Lilybug." He recounted the story, simplifying the complexities but conveying the essence of the offer from Mr. Vance, the man whose dog he'd found. There was a moment of silence on the other end, then Lily's voice filled with awe. "Daddy, that's like something out of a movie. A secret mission. Because you're super honest?" Eli chuckled, a genuine laugh that felt like it released some of the tension coiled in his chest. "Something like that, kiddo, but it's a real job, a really important one, it sounds like. Are you going to take it?" Lily asked, her voice brimming with excitement. "You'd be amazing, Daddy. You fix everything, and you always help people." Her unwavering belief was like a balm to his doubting heart. I don't know, sweetie. It's a big step. I'm a little scared, to be honest." "Don't be scared, Daddy," Lily said with the profound wisdom only a child can possess. "You're the bravest person I know, and Mr. Vance sounds smart if he picked you." Her words, so simple, so pure, cut through his anxieties. If Lily believed in him, if this stranger, Julian Vance, believed in him, maybe, just maybe, he could start to believe in himself too. "Thanks, Sweet Pea. That means a lot." He promised to tell her all about it when he picked her up. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Eli sat at their small kitchen table, the business card lying before him. He thought back to the day he'd found Buster, the simple impulse to help a creature in distress. He hadn't thought twice about it. He remembered the look on Julian Vance's face when Buster was returned, the raw relief. And then, the subsequent conversation, Vance's conviction. He pulled out an old, battered shoebox from the back of his closet, a box filled with mementos of Maria. Tucked inside was a letter he'd started writing to her shortly after she passed, but had never finished, never sent, because where would he send it? It was full of his grief, his fears for the future, his struggle to be both mother and father to Lily, his feeling of being adrift. He read his own words, words of despair and a desperate, clinging hope. "I just want to make you proud, Maria. I want Lily to have a good life, a stable life, but some days it feels impossible." Reading it now, in the light of Julian Vance's offer, felt like looking at a reflection of a man he was, or had been. Perhaps this was a chance to finally steer their little boat into calmer waters. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach. But now it was mingled with a fragile, nascent excitement. What if he could do this? What if this was the break he'd been praying for, the one that had seemed so out of reach? He thought of the Community Mobile Health Initiative, helping people, making a difference. It resonated with something deep inside him, something Maria had always cherished in him. The next day, Eli called Julian Vance's office. His hand trembled slightly as he dialed. The same polite assistant answered. "Mr. Vance's office." "Hello, this is Eli Carson. May I speak with Mr. Vance, please?" There was a brief pause. Then the assistant's voice, warmer this time. "Of course, Mr. Carson. One moment." Julian Vance came on the line almost immediately. "Eli, good to hear from you. Have you given my offer some thought?" His voice was calm, patient, betraying no pressure. Eli took a deep breath. "Yes, sir, I have. And if the offer still stands, I'd like to accept." The words came out more steadily than he expected. He could almost hear the smile in Vance's voice. "It absolutely still stands, Eli. I'm delighted. I truly believe you're the right person for this. Can you come in tomorrow morning? We can go over the details, get the paperwork started, and I can introduce you to a few key people." "Yes, sir. Tomorrow morning sounds good." When he hung up, Eli felt a wave of adrenaline, a potent cocktail of fear and exhilaration. He had said yes. He had taken the leap. The next morning, Eli dressed in the best clothes he owned, a pair of clean pressed chinos, a collared shirt that wasn't too faded, and shoes he'd polished meticulously. He still felt like an imposter, but there was a new lightness in his step. He met Julian Vance, not in the intimidating penthouse office, but in a smaller, more functional conference room on a lower floor, where the Vance Institute for Community Renewal was headquartered. It was still sleek and modern, but it felt more grounded, more focused on work than on power. Julian was affable and welcoming, immediately putting Eli at ease. He introduced him to Sarah Chen, a bright, energetic woman in her early 30s, who was to be the program director for the Mobile Health Initiative, essentially Eli's counterpart on the programmatic side. Sarah had a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Eli, so glad to finally meet you," she said. "Julian has told me a lot about how you found Buster. We're all thrilled to have you on board. Your perspective will be invaluable." Julian then outlined the initiative in more detail. They were retrofitting large vans into mobile service units. One would be a health clinic, another a digital literacy lab, a third a job counseling center. Eli's role would be to oversee all operational aspects: vehicle maintenance, scheduling, supply procurement, routing, volunteer coordination for certain tasks, and ensuring the smooth day-to-day running of the fleet. It was a huge responsibility. "Your first major task, Eli," Julian said, a twinkle in his eye, "is to help us get these vans fully operational. They're currently shells. We need them kitted out, stocked, and ready to roll within 3 months. Think you're up for that?" Eli looked at the blueprints spread across the table, at the hopeful, expectant faces of Julian and Sarah. The fear was still there, a faint hum beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed now by a burgeoning sense of purpose. "Yes, sir," he said, a newfound confidence in his voice. I am. Later that afternoon, Julian took Eli down to a warehouse space they had leased in the Dogpatch neighborhood. Inside were 3 large, empty cargo vans. This is where the magic begins, Eli, Julian said, gesturing around the cavernous space. Your domain, to a large extent. Eli ran his hand along the cool metal side of one of the vans. It felt real, tangible. This wasn't just talk and blueprints anymore. This was steel and rubber, and the promise of something new. He met Joe, a burly, taciturn mechanic who had been hired to oversee the vehicle conversions and maintenance. Joe gave Eli a skeptical once-over, his expression unreadable. Eli knew he'd have to earn Joe's respect. That was okay. He was used to earning things the hard way. For the first time in a long time, Eli Carson felt a flicker of genuine excitement about the future. It was a daunting mountain to climb, but the view from the top, he imagined, would be worth it. The first few weeks in his new role were a whirlwind for Eli. He threw himself into the work with a dedication born of gratitude and a quiet determination to prove Julian Vance's faith in him was not misplaced. The learning curve was steep. He was suddenly dealing with budgets, vendor contracts, logistical spreadsheets, and a team of people who looked to him for decisions. There were moments, usually late at night, when he was poring over schematics for the van conversions or trying to decipher a complex regulatory document, when the old doubts would creep in. What am I doing here? I'm in way over my head. But then he would think of Lily's proud smile, or Julian's steady confidence in him, and he would push through, tackling each challenge with methodical persistence. His handyman skills, surprisingly, translated well to many aspects of the job. He understood mechanics, he knew how to troubleshoot, how to manage resources efficiently, and, most importantly, how to talk to people from all walks of life. Skills honed over years of navigating the gig economy. He quickly learned that his greatest asset was his ability to listen and his practical, no-nonsense approach. When the designers for the mobile clinic proposed an overly complicated layout, Eli, remembering the cramped spaces he'd often worked in, gently pointed out potential ergonomic issues for the staff and patients, suggesting simpler, more user-friendly alternatives that also happened to be more cost-effective. Sarah Chen, initially perhaps a little unsure about this newcomer with no formal non-profit background, quickly came to appreciate his insights. You have a knack for seeing the real-world implications, Eli, she told him one afternoon after he'd successfully negotiated a better deal on medical equipment by speaking directly with a supplier he knew from an old construction job. It's something we desperately need. Building rapport with the rest of the team took time. Joe, the gruff head mechanic, remained skeptical for the first month. He'd seen managers come and go, all talk and no action. But Eli didn't just delegate, he rolled up his sleeves. When a shipment of specialized shelving arrived damaged, Eli was right there beside Joe, figuring out how to repair it rather than waiting weeks for a replacement. He learned the names of Joe's kids, asked about his vintage motorcycle collection, and never once pulled rank. One sweltering afternoon, when the air conditioning in the warehouse failed and Joe was struggling to finish a critical welding job, Eli appeared with a battered cooler full of ice-cold water and Gatorade. He didn't say much, just handed a bottle to Joe. The mechanic grunted his thanks. But the next day, Joe actually initiated a conversation, asking Eli's opinion on an engine modification. It was a small moment, but Eli knew it was a turning point. Respect, he understood, was earned, not given. His relationship with Julian Vance also evolved. Beyond their initial, almost fated encounter, a genuine connection began to form. Julian made it a point to visit the warehouse regularly, not just for formal updates, but to see the progress firsthand, to talk to the team. He and Eli often found themselves grabbing a quick, informal lunch at a local diner near the warehouse. A far cry from the power lunches Julian was accustomed to, but he seemed to genuinely enjoy the simplicity. During these unscripted moments, away from the pressures of their respective roles, they talked about more than just work. Eli, hesitant at first, gradually opened up about Maria, about the challenges of single parenthood, his dreams for Lily. He spoke of the quiet satisfaction he found in fixing things, in making something broken whole again. Julian, in turn, shared glimpses of his own life, a life that, despite its outward trappings of success, was not without its own complexities and even loneliness. He spoke of the immense pressure of his tech empire, the constant demand for innovation, the often isolating nature of leadership. He confessed that the foundation was, for him, a way to reconnect with something more fundamental, something more meaningful than just profit margins and shareholder expectations. "I built an empire, Eli," he said one afternoon, stirring sugar into his coffee in the noisy diner, the clatter of cutlery, a strangely intimate soundtrack to their conversation. "But somewhere along the way, I realized I hadn't built much that would truly last, not in a human sense. This is different. This feels right." He looked at Eli, a flicker of something vulnerable in his usually guarded eyes. "Finding Buster. It was more than just getting my dog back. It felt like a sign. And meeting you, it affirmed that I was on the right path." One Saturday, Julian invited Eli and Lily to a community event the foundation was sponsoring, a park cleanup and family fun day, in a neighborhood that would soon be served by their mobile units. Lily, initially shy, was soon captivated by Julian's surprisingly good juggling skills, a hidden talent, he sheepishly admitted, from his college days, and his patient explanations of the various native plants they were helping to install. Eli watched them, a warmth spreading through his chest. Seeing Lily laugh so freely, seeing this powerful man interact with his daughter with such genuine kindness, it chipped away at the remaining walls around Eli's own heart. He saw Julian not just as a benefactor or a boss, but as a man with a good heart. A man who, like him, was seeking connection and purpose. There were shared experiences in the field that further cemented their bond. As the first mobile unit, the health clinic, neared completion, Julian suggested they do a trial run, an unannounced visit to a small, under-resourced community center in a remote part of the city that often got overlooked. It was just Eli, Julian, Sarah, and a volunteer doctor and nurse. The van, gleaming and new, navigated the narrow streets, and Eli felt a surge of pride. He'd overseen every detail of its outfitting. They set up in the parking lot of a converted church basement that served as the community hub. Word spread quickly, and soon a small, hesitant crowd gathered. Eli found himself naturally falling into the role of welcomer and facilitator, explaining the services, helping elderly residents fill out forms, even using his handyman skills to fix a wobbly handrail at the center's entrance while they waited for patients. Julian watched him, not as an employer observing an employee, but as a partner observing a colleague. Later, as they packed up, Julian clapped Eli on the shoulder. "You were born for this, Eli," he said, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "You've got something the world needs more of." During the drive back, with the city lights twinkling around them, they fell into a comfortable silence. It was Sarah who broke it. "That old gentleman, Mr. Tublet Henderson, the one with the bad cough? He said no one from downtown ever comes out their way. He said today felt like a small miracle." Eli nodded, understanding the sentiment. He knew what it felt like to be overlooked. Julian was quiet for a long time. Then he murmured, almost to himself, "Small miracles. That's what we're aiming for, isn't it?" He glanced at Eli, a shared understanding passing between them. It wasn't always smooth sailing. There were bureaucratic hurdles that made Eli want to tear his hair out, supply chain delays that threatened their tight schedule, and the occasional personality clash within the growing team. One evening, working late with Sarah to untangle a particularly frustrating permitting issue, Eli confessed his lingering insecurities. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and tell me there's been a mistake, that I don't belong here." Sarah stopped typing and looked at him, her expression serious. "Eli, you belong here more than most. You bring a perspective that's real. You care. Don't ever doubt that." Their shared purpose, their mutual respect, began to forge strong bonds within the core team. They were all invested, not just in a project, but in a vision. Eli found himself slowly, carefully, letting go of the deep-seated grief for Maria, not forgetting her, but allowing space for new joys, new connections. He talked to Lily about Maria more openly now, sharing happy memories, but also acknowledging his own sadness, his own journey of healing. And Lily, with her child's wisdom, seemed to understand. She still missed her mum terribly, but she was also thriving, happy to see her dad happier, more engaged, less burdened by constant worry. She'd even started calling Julian Mr. J, a nickname he seemed to delight in. One evening, as Eli and Julian were walking out of the warehouse after a long day, Julian paused. "You know, Eli," he said, his voice softer than usual, "I had a son. He would have been about your age." It was the first time he'd ever mentioned a child. "Lost him a long time ago. Different circumstances than your Maria, but loss is loss. For years I just threw myself into work, built walls. I think," he hesitated, searching for the words, "I think, Buster, and then meeting you, it started to dismantle some of those walls. Reminded me that there's more to life than just building things." Eli was silent, sensing the depth of pain behind Julian's words. He simply nodded, a gesture of shared understanding, of acknowledging a pain that words couldn't truly touch. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, a quiet unveiling of past hurts that drew them closer, not just as colleagues, but as men who had both known profound loss and were, in their own ways, searching for healing and connection. The city lights glowed around them, and for Eli, the path ahead, while still challenging, no longer felt quite so solitary. Just as the community mobile health initiative was gaining real momentum, with 2 vans fully operational and making a tangible difference in several neighborhoods, a crisis struck. It began subtly, with a few whispered complaints, then escalated into a serious issue. Unit C, the refrigerated van designed to transport vaccines and temperature-sensitive medications, reported a critical refrigeration failure during an outreach event in a particularly vulnerable community. A significant batch of pediatric vaccines had to be discarded. A costly error that also meant dozens of children missed their scheduled immunizations. The media, always hungry for a story, especially one involving a high-profile philanthropic venture, picked up on it. Headlines hinted at mismanagement and incompetence within the Vance Institute. The internal investigation quickly focused on operational oversight. Marcus Thorne, a recent hire in the logistics department who had a background in corporate supply chains and a faintly superior attitude, was quick to point fingers. Thorne had always seemed to resent Eli's unconventional hiring and his close relationship with Julian. The protocols for temperature checks clearly weren't followed, Thorne stated in a team meeting, his gaze flicking towards Eli. Someone in operations dropped the ball. This is what happens when we don't have seasoned professionals in key roles. The implication was clear, and it hung heavy in the air. Eli, though his stomach churned with anxiety, felt a cold dread. He knew he had personally double-checked the pre-departure checklist for Unit C that morning. The refrigeration unit had been functioning perfectly. Julian Vance called an emergency meeting. The pressure was immense, not just from the media, but from the Institute's board members. Eli felt a knot of ice in his gut. He had poured his heart and soul into this project. The thought that he might have been responsible, even inadvertently, for such a failure was devastating. He explained calmly and clearly the checks he had performed, his meticulous process. "I don't understand how this could have happened," he stated, his voice quiet but firm. "The unit was optimal when it left the warehouse." Marcus Thorne scoffed audibly. "With all due respect, Mr. Carson's process might not be up to industry standards. These are complex systems." Julian listened to everyone, his face unreadable. The easy camaraderie of the past few months felt distant, replaced by a tense, formal atmosphere. He announced that Eli would be placed on administrative leave, pending a full technical investigation. "This is procedural, Eli," Julian said, his voice carefully neutral, though Eli thought he detected a flicker of regret in his eyes. "We need to be thorough and transparent." Eli nodded, numb. Administrative leave. It felt like a guilty verdict. As he walked out of the Institute's offices that day, the weight of suspicion felt heavier than any physical burden he had ever carried. He felt the stares of his colleagues, some sympathetic, some questioning. The dream, it seemed, was turning into a nightmare. He dreaded telling Lily. The next few days were agonizing. Eli stayed home, replaying every moment, every check, every procedure in his mind, searching for a mistake he might have made. The silence from the Institute was deafening. Lily, perceptive as always, knew something was wrong. "Daddy, are you okay? You look sad." He tried to reassure her, but his heart wasn't in it. The fear of having failed, of having let Julian down, was a constant torment. He felt like he was back where he started, the brief period of hope and stability a cruel illusion. Meanwhile, Julian Vance, despite the external pressure to find a scapegoat quickly, found himself deeply troubled. Eli's quiet integrity, his unwavering honesty from the moment they met, warred with the damning evidence of the refrigeration failure. He remembered Eli's meticulous nature, the care he took with everything, from fixing a leaky faucet to outfitting an entire mobile clinic. It just didn't add up. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Against the advice of some of his board members, who urged him to cut ties with Eli swiftly to manage the PR fallout, Julian decided to dig deeper himself. He quietly authorized a forensic analysis of Unit C's telemetry data and security logs from the warehouse, tasks that went beyond the standard mechanical checks. He also spoke at length with Sarah Chen and Joe, the mechanic. "Eli wouldn't be careless with something like this, Mr. Vance," Joe said, his usual gruffness softened by concern. "He's too damn particular, checks everything 3 times. If he said that unit was good, it was good." Sarah, too, defended Eli. "Marcus Thorne has been eager to find fault with Eli from day one. I've seen him undermining Eli subtly for weeks." The forensic report landed on Julian's desk 3 days later. It was damning, but not for Eli. The telemetry data showed the refrigeration unit had been functioning perfectly until approximately 30 minutes after it left the warehouse. Then, a critical sensor had been manually overridden, deactivating the cooling system. It wasn't a malfunction. It was sabotage. Security footage from a rarely monitored camera angle near the dispatch bay, which Julian had specifically requested be reviewed, showed a figure, partially obscured but identifiable by his distinctive watch and build, lingering near Unit C shortly before its departure, after Eli had signed off on it. It was Marcus Thorne. Further investigation into Thorne's work computer revealed disgruntled emails and a connection to a rival logistics company that had unsuccessfully bid for the Institute's transportation contract. Thorne had been feeding them information, hoping to discredit the Institute's in-house operations and position himself or his contacts for a takeover. The relief that washed over Julian was immense, quickly followed by a cold anger. He called Eli immediately. "Eli, can you come to my office? Right now." Eli arrived, his face drawn, expecting the worst. Julian didn't waste time. He laid out the findings, the evidence of Thorne's sabotage. As the truth unfolded, Eli felt a complex wave of emotions: shock, anger at Thorne's betrayal, but overwhelmingly, a profound, deep relief. He hadn't failed. He hadn't been negligent. "I knew it," Julian said, his voice tight, with controlled fury, then softening as he looked at Eli. "I mean, I doubted myself for doubting you, if that makes sense. Your character, Eli, it spoke louder than Thorne's accusations. I am so sorry you had to go through this." "Thank you, Mr. Vance," Eli said, his voice thick with emotion, "for believing in me, for finding the truth." The next morning, Julian called an all-staff meeting. Marcus Thorne was conspicuously absent, having been summarily dismissed. Julian addressed the team, his voice ringing with conviction. He laid out the facts of the sabotage, commended the investigative team, and then he turned to Eli, who stood quietly at the side. "Eli Carson," Julian said, his voice resonating through the suddenly silent room, "is a man of unimpeachable integrity and dedication. He was wrongly implicated, and he bore it with a quiet dignity that speaks volumes about his character. This institute was founded on principles of trust and community. What happened was a betrayal of those principles by one individual, but it also served to highlight the strength of character of others." He looked directly at Eli. "Eli, your quiet leadership, your meticulous care, and your unwavering commitment are invaluable to this organization. We are proud and fortunate to have you. Welcome back." Officially, a spontaneous round of applause broke out, genuine and heartfelt. Sarah Chen beamed, Joe the mechanic gave a rare, broad grin, and a thumbs up. Eli felt a warmth spread through him, dispelling the last vestiges of the chill from the preceding days. He hadn't just been vindicated, he had been publicly affirmed. The crisis, designed to break him and discredit the project, had ultimately strengthened the bonds of trust within the team and solidified his place within the institute. Later that day, Julian found Eli in the warehouse, already back at work, meticulously checking the sensor logs on another van. He didn't say anything for a moment, just watched Eli, a sense of deep respect in his eyes. "You know," Julian finally said, "this whole mess, it taught me something. I built my tech companies on algorithms and data, but this foundation, it's built on people, on trust. And sometimes you have to trust your gut feeling about someone, even when the data seems to point elsewhere." Eli looked up, a small, grateful smile on his face. "I'm just glad it's over, and glad I didn't let you down." "You never did, Eli," Julian said softly. "You never did." He paused. "Tonight, my place. Dinner. Just us and Lily. If she's free, no shop talk. Just a thank you. And maybe a celebration of surviving the storm." Eli's smile widened. "We'd like that very much, Julian." The use of Julian's first name felt natural now, a symbol of the deeper, more personal bond that had been forged through the crucible of crisis and vindication. The storm had passed, and the foundations of their shared endeavor and their friendship were stronger than ever. The dinner at Julian's Pacific Heights mansion was a world away from the tense meetings and worried silences of the previous week. The house, usually a testament to minimalist precision and quiet wealth, felt warmer, more welcoming. Lily, completely unfazed by the grandeur, chatted happily about her school project and her latest drawing, which she proudly presented to Mr. J. It was a colorful depiction of the mobile clinic van, with stick figures of her, Eli, and Julian standing beside it, all smiling under a bright yellow sun. "This is for you, Mr. J," she said, "because you and Daddy are helping people." Julian accepted the drawing with a genuine warmth that touched Eli deeply. "Lily, this is the best piece of art I've received all year," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm going to frame it and put it in my office, right where I can see it every day, to remind me what this is all about." For Eli, watching his daughter's simple, heartfelt gesture connect so readily with this man who had changed their lives, it symbolized a healing that extended beyond just himself. It was a healing for their little family unit. The resolution of the sabotage incident and Eli's public vindication marked a turning point. The cloud of suspicion lifted, replaced by an even deeper respect for Eli among his colleagues. The Mobile Health Initiative, now with its integrity reaffirmed, moved forward with renewed vigor. Eli, no longer just the operations guy, was increasingly seen as a moral compass for the team, his quiet steadfastness a source of inspiration. Julian, having seen Eli's resilience and character tested under fire, entrusted him with even greater responsibility. He proposed a significant expansion. "Eli, I want you to head up the development of a new prototype, a fully integrated mobile community hub. Not just separate vans, but a larger, expandable vehicle that can offer multiple services simultaneously. A one-stop shop for support. It's ambitious. It'll be your baby, from design to deployment." It was a monumental task, a vote of confidence that left Eli momentarily speechless. But this time, the fear was a distant echo, replaced by a steady sense of purpose. "I'd be honored, Julian," he said, the words imbued with a quiet confidence he wouldn't have recognized in himself just a few months prior. As they worked on this new vision, Eli and Julian's friendship deepened. Their conversations often strayed beyond the Institute's work, touching on life, loss, and the search for meaning. They discovered a shared love for old jazz music, for long walks that cleared the head, for the simple satisfaction of a problem solved, whether it was a complex logistical challenge or a stubborn engine. Julian, who had spent so much of his life in the rarefied air of corporate boardrooms, found a grounding presence in Eli's common-sense wisdom and unpretentious company. And Eli, who had long felt adrift, found in Julian not just an employer, but a mentor and a true friend, someone who saw his worth when he had struggled to see it himself. "You know, Eli," Julian mused one afternoon as they stood on a hill overlooking the city, the skeleton of the new mobile hub taking shape in the warehouse below them. "I often think about that day you found Buster. Such a small thing, a lost dog. And yet," Eli nodded, "and yet, it changed everything. For me, at least." He paused, reflecting on the journey. "I was just trying to do the right thing, Julian. I never imagined—" "That's the point, isn't it?" Julian said, looking out at the sprawling city. "The right things, the truly important things, are often done without imagining a reward. They're done because they're an extension of who we are. Your integrity, Eli. It was like a beacon. I was searching for someone, something, to believe in for this foundation. And then you walked into my office, expecting nothing. The culmination of their initial efforts and the symbol of their new beginnings was the official launch ceremony for the first 3 completed mobile units. It was held in a public plaza, attended by city officials, community leaders, media, and the very people the vans were designed to serve. Julian gave a heartfelt speech, thanking the team and the community for their support. Then, to Eli's complete surprise, Julian called him to the podium. "This initiative wouldn't be what it is," Julian announced, his voice firm, "without the quiet dedication, the practical genius, and the profound integrity of our operations manager, Eli Carson. He's the heart of this operation, the man who makes sure the wheels literally keep turning and that they turn with purpose and compassion." Eli, usually so reserved, found himself blinking back tears as applause filled the plaza. He spoke briefly, his voice a little shaky but clear, thanking Julian for the opportunity, thanking his team, and dedicating their work to "people like my daughter, Lily, and to the memory of my wife, Maria, who taught me the importance of kindness. He saw Lily in the crowd, beaming, next to a visibly proud Sarah Chen and a nodding Joe. In that moment, standing there, acknowledged and valued, Eli felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. He was no longer just a struggling handyman. He was a leader, a builder, a man who had found his purpose. Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the successful launch was being celebrated quietly by the team, Julian found Eli standing by one of the gleaming new vans, a soft smile on his face. The city lights twinkled around them, a backdrop to their shared achievement. "Well, we did it," Julian said, coming to stand beside him. "Yes," Eli agreed. "We did. What you said up there about Maria, she would be very proud of you, Eli." Eli looked at Julian, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself." Julian clapped him on the shoulder. "The thanks are mine, Eli. You reminded me what truly matters." He paused. Then a more personal note entered his voice. "You know, Eli, this city, my life, it can be a lonely place, even when you're surrounded by people. Having a friend, a real friend, that's a rare gift." Eli understood. "It is," he said softly. He thought of his life before Buster. The constant grind, the pervasive loneliness. Now, he had a fulfilling job, a renewed sense of self, and a friend he trusted and respected. He had stability for Lily. He had hope. As they stood there, a comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that only exists between people who understand each other without needing words. The future of the Vance Institute for Community Renewal stretched before them, bright with promise, full of new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference. For Eli Carson, the journey that had begun with a lost dog in Golden Gate Park had led him to an unexpected, extraordinary destination, a place of purpose, belonging, and profound, quiet joy. He was no longer just surviving, he was thriving, and he knew, with a certainty that warmed him from the inside out, that this was just the beginning. The golden gate of opportunity had indeed opened for him, not through chance alone, but through the enduring power of a good heart and an honest soul. And so, we come to the end of Eli's story, but it's also a beginning, isn't it? A reminder that life has a funny way of rewarding the kindness we put out into the world, often when and where we least expect it. It reminds us that integrity isn't old-fashioned, it's timeless, and it's a currency that can open doors far more valuable than any material wealth can. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Your presence here, sharing in these stories, means more than you know. We hope Eli's journey has touched your heart and perhaps sparked a little bit of hope. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep believing in the quiet miracles that unfold around us every day, often sparked by the simplest acts of goodness. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story waiting to be told. And before you go, we'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Share it with us in the comments below. It's wonderful to see how far these stories can travel and connect us all.